Good evening, everyone. My name is Jared Frank, Chair of the Board of Adjustment for the City of Wildwood. Welcome to the April meeting. Tonight, I am battling some seasonal allergies, so Vice Chair Sprunger has volunteered to read the opening statement. So without further ado, we'll get started.
All right, very good. So this evening is our monthly meeting of the Board of Adjustment. While we are having to change how we operate, we are still committed to a transparent process and encouragement of public comment during our meetings. We will be accepting testimony from parties. If you wish to testify on any particular petition before us this evening using the Zoom platform, please use the raise hand feature. You can raise your hand at any time, and we will recognize you at the appropriate time for the presentation of evidence for each case. If in person, please hand to the staff your speaker's card. Senior Planner Travis Newberry will be moderating the hybrid meeting and will be asked to provide names of those individuals that wish to speak. I would like to call the meeting of the City of Wildwood's Board of Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Mr. Jared Frank, Chair, Mr. Bob Morris, Board Member, Mr. Jim Van Ness, Board Member, Mr. Jim Rubis, Alternate Member, and myself, Arnie Sprunger, Vice Chair, and introducing this meeting at the request of the Chair. The Department of Planning staff present is Mr. Joe Vunich, Director of Planning, Mr. Travis Newberry, Senior Planner, and Ms. Robin Keefe, Planner. Also in attendance are City Attorney, Mr. John Young, and Court Reporter, Ms. Courtney Tallman are also present. Okay, first I offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting, April 20th, 2023, and take official notice of the zoning ordinance of City of Wildwood, including Chapter 400, Article 2, authorizing and establishing the Board of Adjustment's powers and duties. Now, let me explain the hearing procedure. Please be aware the information I'm about to describe is also provided on the Board of Adjustment Public Hearing Procedure handout, which was available online prior and up to tonight's meeting. This meeting is informal in its nature. However, the meeting's proceedings will be recorded by a reporter for future transcription if needed. The petitions are called in the order listed on the agenda. As the petition is called, the chair will ask a Department of Planning staff member to read each request into the record. Thereafter, the Department of Planning will have opening remarks and a brief slide presentation. Then the petitioner or his or her representative will be asked to state their name and address, be sworn in by the court reporter, make a brief presentation to the board explaining the nature of the requested variance, and present such evidence and witness testimony that may evidence the practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship that warrant the variance. The board will only consider the unique character of the property to determine whether they warrant the granting of a variance. Board members may ask questions to clarify the facts of the petitioner's presentation. When the board is satisfied with the material presented by the petitioner, the chair will then ask if there is anyone present or online who would like to speak in favor or opposition to the requested variance. Each speaker will be asked to provide their name and address, be sworn in, and then provide their evidence and oral testimony. Procedurally, the petitioner may request a continuance at any time during the hearing prior to a call for the vote in order to bring in additional evidence or testimony. The board may also continue the proceedings. After the submission of testimony and evidence from all interested parties, the board will ask a staff person to provide the Department of Planning's report on this matter if requested by any member of the board, the petitioner, or any individual that is participating in person or online. Once all witnesses have been heard, the chair will call for a motion to grant or deny with or without conditions. Then the board will vote. At that time, the presentation of evidence relating to the petition is concluded and no further evidence will be permitted. The board may make a decision today. 4 members of the board must vote in favor of the variance for it to be approved. If a variance is approved, the petitioner has 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use, or it will expire. If the board's decision is unfavorable, the petitioner has the right of appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. This appeal must be done within 30 days of the decision. Mr. Newberry, are there any questions at this time?
Mr. Vice Chair, I don't believe so.
All right, thank you very much. So hearing no questions at this time, the meeting will proceed at the direction of Chair Frank.
Thank you, Vice Chair Schwanger. I appreciate getting through that. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, the first of 2 items on tonight's agenda is BA 7-23, James and Mary Fears, 16204 Marina Del Rey Lane, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. Request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general and the requirements set forth approved in Planned Environment Unit, PEU, ordinance number 12935, for the purpose of replacing an existing railroad tie retaining wall with stone block type, which will have a maximum height of 9 feet upon the property located at 16204 Marina Del Rey Lane, locator number 24U 510453, Harbors at Lake Chesterfield Edition, Lot 85, which would authorize a northern side yard setback distance of 3 feet in lieu of 6 feet and a front yard setback distance of 17 feet in lieu of 20 feet. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.140, R3 10,000 square foot resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance and Planned Environment Unit, PEU, ordinance number 12935, approved by St. Louis County in 1987. This particular property is located in Ward 7. And Mr. Chair and members of the board, before having Ms. Keefe come forward with the slide presentation, the department would like to enter into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the department relative to this request, and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any items that are offered at tonight's hearing as testimony, exhibits, or others. Thank you.
Initial comments from the planning staff and followed by a brief presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'll just go right into the presentation. All right, the subject lot tonight in question is located in southeast Wildwood in the Harbors at Lake Chesterfield Edition. This is a subdivision of 158 single-family lots. It is a planned environmental unit approved by St. Louis County in 1987. This is characterized by clustered single-family residences around large common area tracts of land. The property is zoned R3 10,000 square foot residential district within this PEU. It is approximately a 1/4 acre in size, and it has frontage on Marina Del Rey Lane, which is a 50-foot wide publicly maintained roadway by the City of Wildwood. It is occupied by a single-family home built in 1990, along with an existing retaining wall supporting that home, also built around that same time. The property has a small slope to it. It has about 14 feet total relief descending from front to rear. And it is covered in grassy turf area with intermittent trees. Here you will see the existing residence in relation to the existing retaining wall that is proposed to be replaced by the petitioner. It will not be replaced exactly in kind. It will go from a railroad tie type to stone wall construction. The requested variance is to allow this replacement retaining wall to intrude into the front setback area 3 feet and also into that northern side setback area, again, 3 feet. Planner Newberry, it is not advancing for me. Thank you. This is the front of the residence looking east. This is looking south. This is Marina Del Rey Lane. This is looking north, also on Marina Del Rey Lane. This is looking east, and here you can see the existing retaining wall that is to be replaced. And this is just a closer up look at it. We are looking south, and the petitioner's residence is featured in this photo behind the wall. Okay, here we are looking north, and this is the abutting neighbor, petitioner's residence, and the retaining wall in question is in this vicinity. Here we are looking west at the rear of the retaining wall. So we're looking between those same 2 residences, but from a different vantage point. And just to give you a sense of the rest of the property, this is looking east on the other side of the residence, standing from the front. This is the rear yard of the residence. This is looking south. And then this is looking northeast. The department has received no written comments pertaining to this application at the time of this presentation, and I have no information to share as far as past variances. So that concludes my presentation tonight. And if you have any questions, we are available to answer them. Yes.
Real quick, is the location of the proposed block wall at the very same place as where the existing
That's
railroad tie?
correct. It will be replaced exactly as is, only with a different type of construction.
Thank you, Ms. Keefe.
We have no comments from the trustees?
No, but we can definitely condition that as part of this approval tonight.
I don't think they'd have a problem with it. I was just curious as to whether I didn't find it or whether.
No, we have not received any approval at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Keefe. At this time, will the petitioner please come forward, state his or her name, address, relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporters?
Mr. Chair, I don't have anyone on Zoom besides Ms. Clark.
The petitioner does not appear to be in attendance tonight.
Director Unich.
Mr. Chair, with the absence of the petitioner, the department would respectfully request a postponement.
Procedurally, do we need to do a roll call for that? Yep. Can I have a motion to postpone this to the next meeting? Thank you, Ms. Rubus. And the second? We'll do a roll call. Ms. Rubus, how do you vote? Mr. Van Nest? Mr. Morris? Vice Chair Sprunger?
Yes.
And I vote yes to postpone as well to the next meeting.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Mhm.
I can't
Yes,
hear,
go ahead.
I can hear anybody but, the chairman and the vice chairman. Are the mics on? For the other board members?
Courtney, can you hear Jim Rubis?
I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you before. I didn't hear you make the motion. I only knew because Mr. Frank said it.
Mr. Chair, could you repeat the motion and then do the vote again? And gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind using your microphones, it'd be much appreciated.
At this time, can we have a motion to postpone the, this petition till the next meeting?
Aye.
No, mode.
I'll make a motion to postpone the meeting.
And a second to postpone them, or a second?
I second it.
And we'll do a roll call. Mr. Rubis, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Van Nest,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sprunger?
Yes.
And I vote as well to yes to postpone till next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Courtney.
Mr. Vunich, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I've never seen this before where the petitioner didn't show. Is it a requirement or? I mean, it's always you would like them here, but could we have voted it down or voted it up without them? I'm just curious.
In the event that the vote would have been negative, there's certainly some ramifications from a legal standpoint, and I'll defer to Mr. Young to explain.
The short answer is give them every opportunity to either present, or after getting a second notice, they don't show up, you can take whatever action, but it's always advisable to give them every opportunity for due process sake.
I just hadn't seen this before.
It's happened very, very infrequently, but in the past 27 plus years, I've seen it on a couple of occasions. And oftentimes it's either just something came up and the absence was inexcusable, so to speak.
I mean, not to ask the obvious question, but does someone just reach out to them and encourage them to come the next time?
We will,
Yeah.
certainly. And we'll offer them both the option of in-person and Zoom, so hopefully it'll make it as convenient as possible.
Thank you.
Please proceed with the next petition.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the board, the last item on tonight's agenda is BA 8-23, John M. Copeland, 18025 Shepherd Valley Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038. Request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of constructing a new in-ground swimming pool with associated concrete decking upon the property located at 18025 Shepherd Valley Road, locator number 22V 610077, Shepherd Valley Subdivision, Lot 18, which would authorize a rear yard setback distance of 5.5 feet in lieu of the 30-foot standard. Excuse me. The request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Resident District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance. This particular property is located in Ward 3. And again, Mr. Chair, with your permission, before Ms. Keefe comes forward to provide the slide presentation and any initial comments, the department would like to introduce into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the department relative to this request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And again, finally, any testimony, exhibits, or other items offered as evidence at tonight's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vunich. Ms. Keefe?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Our second case this evening concerns a property located in northeastern West Wildwood this time. It is located within the Shepherd Valley subdivision, which was platted in 1978. This lot is 3 acres in size and has frontage along Shepherd Valley Road to the south, which is a 50-foot wide privately maintained roadway. It is zoned non-urban residence district which does require that there be a 30-foot rear yard setback, which is the topic of this variance request. The property is occupied by a single-family dwelling. Here you can see the contour lines on the property. As you can see, there is some substantial slope present, 68 feet total relief. However, the steepest portion of that slope is at the front of the property to the south, and not so much at the northern portion of it, particularly in this northwestern corner here, up where the residence is located. That area is actually relatively flat. The front portion of the property, again, is heavily wooded. There's also some trees to the east. However, the area around the residence is largely grassy turf area with intermittent trees. The petitioner this evening is requesting to construct a new in-ground swimming pool with the associated concrete decking, and then also a fence that is depicted here, but is not part of this variance request this evening. The petitioner's request is that this swimming pool be placed just beyond or just to the rear of the residence, and the wooden deck feature supporting it, which would place it at that 5.5 feet from the rear property line. And here you can see the whole lot in relation to the placement of the residence, which is here, and the proposed pool improvement. And this is a closer up look at that. This is standing in front of the property from the roadway, looking north at the driveway. Oops, I apologize. This is to give you a perspective of the surroundings. This is Shepherd Valley Road, and this is looking west, and this is looking east upon it. And this is across the street looking south. This is the front of the residence, looking northeast and up the hill a bit. And this is looking north. The attached garage to the residential structure is to the right in this photo or to the east. And this is the driveway turnaround area. And obviously we're getting into the rear yard area. Okay, this is another perspective looking slightly more northwest from the driveway turnaround area. And this is looking from that location at the abutting neighbor, and this is the neighbor to the west. And then this is looking from behind the driveway turnaround area, looking more southwest. Here it is hard to see, but the petitioner did flag the location of the proposed pool improvement in this rear yard area. I'm about to give you a closer look at it. But we are looking northeast right now at the petitioner's rear yard behind the residence. And here is a closer look at that staked area. And you can see a residential structure to the north. This is one of the abutting neighbors who, as you have in your packet, they are in support of the request. This is looking southeast at that same area. This is the rear of the residence. And this is looking more southwest. And I apologize, the camera, I think, took a minute to respond when I took that photo. This is looking south. This is the eastern side of the property. I'm standing in the rear yard, so we're getting a look on the other side of the home now. This is slightly southeast. And this is looking southwest. We are on the eastern side of the residential structure. And this is looking more south. Okay, here is the public support for the request. There is trustee approval. And the two most affected neighbors abutting the property to the north are in support of the request, and you have that before you this evening. And the department has also received 2 other written comments in support of the request. There is no substantially similar variance information to report. The one variance in the area was indicated in the report. So that concludes my presentation at this time. And if you have any questions of the department, we are happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keefe. At this time, will the petitioner please come forward, state his or her name, address, relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the reporter?
Hi, I'm John Copeland, 18025 Shepherd Valley Road, and I am the property owner.
Get you sworn in here, Mr. Copeland.
Okay, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Copeland, if you could please explain the nature of the request, the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance as it relates to the character of the property only.
Sure. I'll probably be a little more lengthy than the previous person. So,
Good to have you.
Yes, my wife and I moved here about 3.5 years ago, all the way from Chesterfield. Didn't realize how beautiful Wildwood was until we got out here. We were prior pool owners in that residence, and we've always wanted to put a pool in our current house. In surveying the terrain and the layout of the property, we feel where we're proposing to the rear, directly to the rear of our house, is the most practical and safest place to put an in-ground pool. Being a prior pool owner, for me, it's always very important to have visibility of the pool at all times. So I know there are a couple other areas on our property that potentially could have a pool, but it's not safe. There's no visibility from the house itself or from the dwelling. So for me, that it's a no-go. If you can't see it, I have grandkids, things happen. I want to be able to see the pool at all times from the residence. So that's why we've chosen this area. And it's also more aesthetically pleasing. I wasn't sure what kind of pictures Robin had taken, so I did bring a little handout. And again, I'll try to make this quick. But I did bring some additional pictures if I can bring.
Yeah, absolutely, please.
So if we could just walk through these pictures very quickly. Picture one, again, this I did try to superimpose the pool. I'm sorry, for you guys. Superimpose what the pool project would look like in the actual yard picture itself. So this is looking directly out of the back of the house. And just for reference, there's a pine tree off there to the right-hand side. That pine tree is actually not in our yard. That's in our neighbor's yard, the way the property line is. Yet all of that area behind there, we maintain because there's no practical way for the other property owner to get through the woods to try to maintain that space. So while it's not our property, we treat it as our property and take care of it. And it also shows that there really isn't much visibility from the neighbor who has supported this project. Picture two, again, it's just another view looking a little bit more to the, that would be the northeast. The neighbor is way back in the woods there. I don't think you can even see the structure. But again, it shows what the pool layout would look like in that space. Picture three is looking to the northwest, and our other neighbor is actually down a slope, probably a 60-foot drop off down in that hole beneath us. So they are, I don't believe, affected by this. They can't see it. Again, we maintain that space because there's no way for them to get up that hill to try to do anything. Picture 4 is one of the areas that was a potential that we were looking at to the east of the house for the pool. It still has a slope to it. We would have to put in a retaining wall there, probably about 50 foot in length, varying in height. And I don't think it's practical from a safety standpoint. This is the east side of the house. We have no access to that. We have a walkout in the basement, but we don't use that area. So if I have my grandkids there, I would never be able to see them if I had to run into the house for whatever reason, or had to take one of them in. So we really didn't feel that that was a practical or, again, safe place. The last thing that I put in here is the other area is directly behind our driveway turnaround. That, as you can see, I put a image there in blue of where the pool project would have to go. We are going to do an extension to our driveway hopefully, after we do this project. Driveway starting to fall apart. And it's a blind drive up the 68 foot or however tall you said the relief is. And you get to the top, you can't make a complete turnaround. And when we have people over, you can only park a certain number of cars up there. So we want to expand that about 12 feet to allow for a complete turnaround and have additional parking when we have people over or family over. In doing that, it would have to push the pool project back accordingly, which puts us back into the 30-foot setback. So we would be right back here again saying, okay, we still want to go into the setback to put the pool. So just really quickly, that's, you're looking at the alternatives we had, kind of the layout of the unique layout of our property. And again, I really do have to emphasize from our standpoint, it is safety and the practicality of where we would want to put the pool. For us, it seems like the only logical place is directly behind the house.
Anything else, Mr. Copeland?
No.
Thank you very much for the handout and the thoroughness. At this time, any board member questions for Mr. Copeland? Mr. Van Ness?
Okay, so the concrete surround is going to be 5 foot from the property line, which you can't see because it's imaginary. But you're still going to have another 50 foot or so before you get to the woods?
Yeah, exactly. It's looking to the northwest, it's at least 50 feet to the woods.
I was picturing it being right at the edge of nowhere, at the edge of woods or whatever. And it looks like if you're taking care of the property anyway, it's not as drastic as it sounds.
Yeah, again, we maintain that because we have to maintain it, and we choose to, obviously. The neighbors could not practically do it.
You get the most use out of it. I mean,
Exactly, yeah, and we do. And I think both neighbors have been there for a long time. I don't know who the prior owner, if they took care of it, they had to, because there's no way for the other owners to do it. So yes, there is still a substantial amount of space beyond where that pool deck would be.
as a pool owner myself, I know the visibility from the house for the kids and the grandkids is utmost for safety. So thank you.
Thank you.
So another question. Your last diagram that has an alternative
Mhm.
location, that's assuming a driveway expansion. If you didn't do the driveway expansion, you could put the pool
It would be very close. I
It'd
mean,
be
we would
tight.
still be very close to that 30-foot offset. And it's really not, it will be done to the driveway, because in living there for the 3 years, I don't know how many times we've had, rearrange all the cars to
Yeah.
get somebody, because there's no way to back down that hill. It's no
Yeah,
practical way,
yeah.
no safe way to back down the hill. So people
Mhm.
have to be able to turn around up there.
Any additional questions from the board? Mr. Copeland? Mr. Rubus?
It looks like the 30-foot setback, the whole pool is in the 30 setback.
It is. And I guess originally when this house was built, I think it was 86 or something. I think the setback was only 20 feet at that point. And so if you look at it, even part of the deck is beyond that 30-foot setback.
Yeah. If you built in the alternate place, you would still encroach upon that,
Yes.
but not as severely.
No, it would not be as far into that space.
What would your visibility be?
It wouldn't, that's the real issue from a safety standpoint. The back of our house is all windows, and, so we can see from every room except bedrooms. we can see directly out, but we can't see to the west, which is what that is, where the pool would be if we put it in that alternate location, as we can't see to the east, to the other side of the
So-
house.
The house line footprint on this drawing from the driveway expansion over to where it makes its first turn. There's no windows in.
No,
that
it's all garage on that end of the house. So the only windows in the house are front and rear.
area. That's where. This area right
Yes,
here.
correct.
There's no windows.
No
on
windows, no.
And just to be clear, there's two properties that adjoin you on the north, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
And we saw a green check mark on both of those.
yes, they both provided letters.
Okay, just want to be clear on that. I do have a kind of an interesting question. On your diagram, there's like this subject property landscaping. Look at, are
Yeah.
you landscaping the neighbor's property or what?
Well, again, that was, we've moved it 3.5 years ago. There was a little, it's just a little island that has mulch in it and a couple pine trees. So it actually encroached into their property. I don't know when that was done. The trees look like they're probably 30 years old or more. So,
Okay. And you take care of that?
yeah, yes.
That's what you're indicating here is, okay.
Yeah, well, we take well beyond that. We take care of all the turf that's beyond that to the woods also.
Yeah, the line, you mow it and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And the area that we're talking about, that where we, this 5.5 foot, that is the corner of the fence
That's the corner of the pool deck of the concrete.
pool deck. Is there, excuse me, what is Wildwood with ordinance on the minimum decking around the pool?
Commissioner Venus?
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Rubus, the minimum width of the decking is typically 4 feet.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I would just like to follow up and again clarify that the fence is not a subject of this variance request.
Any other questions for petitioner? It looks like no major trees or trees at all would have to be removed. Is
No.
that correct?
No, it's
Any other questions, Mr. Copeland?
Be any removal of trees in the alternate location?
if we were to go to the east of the house, we would have to take one tree down just to get the equipment, the truck back in there. If we could even get a concrete truck back there, because the front slope of the yard, I'm not sure they would even attempt it. I wouldn't want the liability.
Well, how will, if you get successful in getting the variance, how would the concrete truck get this?
Straight up the driveway, because this is right to the rear of the driveway, and then they would just drive to that spot.
Straight up driveway?
I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't do a layout. There's two potential, there's one to the east of the house, which is
The one
just
that you have,
the one I have drawn. Yeah, the
Yeah.
same thing. They wouldn't have an issue with the concrete truck there. There was another potential spot to the east that I don't think could happen.
And there's no way you could go to the front of the house.
No, it's sloped also. And
Yeah.
I don't know if our trustees would let us put a pool in the front of the
Yeah,
house.
probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I would vote against it if I were.
Yeah, right. Okay. Just kind of poking at everything here. So thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Copeland? Mr. Newberry, any speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or opposition to the request?
Mr. Chair, we do have one in attendance. They have not indicated they'd like to speak by raising their hands.
Seeing none at this time, I'd like to offer the department an opportunity to, if anybody would like to hear an oral presentation of their report. Seeing none, any final comments from the Department of Planning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The department is recommending against this variance this evening. In this case, the department's position is that there is no hardship to the applicant in regards to building this proposed in-ground swimming pool improvement, given that there is potentially 2 other locations that are less intrusive into the setback area located upon the property. From our perspective, as public officials and as custodians of the Wildwood zoning code, we have to take this position. The applicant has also not proposed a mitigation plan. Thank you.
What do you mean a mitigation plan?
Well, if members would recall, in some instances, such as when there's intrusion into perhaps like a Wildwood Natural Resource Protection Area, an applicant might propose a swap or some sort of substantial mitigation in exchange for the proposed improvement. And sometimes this can weigh into whether or not a variance could be considered. Thank you.
Well, does a mitigation plan, is that even relevant in this particular example or this case rather?
Well, for example, in this case, we're not talking about a swap. Obviously, that's a
Right.
different sort of example. But potentially the applicant could propose perhaps a tree buffer around the fence of the pool. Or really, it's up to this board to determine what's appropriate given the surroundings and given the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robin, did the department consider anything about the safety feature of this? I mean, like the petitioner said, I mean, if he puts it in that area, it doesn't sound too safe to me. I mean, you ought to be able to see the pool.
So from the department's perspective, as custodians of the Wildwood zoning code, we look at it more in terms of the physical characteristics of the property. This board has more discretion as to what constitutes a hardship in this case. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Any other? Go ahead, Mr. Van.
I agree with the planning department on the 2 other locations. I just don't think that they're nearly as acceptable as the location where the petitioner wants to put it from the safety of the kids and grandkids and the visibility. You always want to be able to see the pool if there's people out in the backyard. And I understand the planning department has their guidelines, but I think the other 2 locations aren't near as acceptable as the proposed one.
Well, certainly, I think Ms. Keefe has provided an excellent response to Mr.
Mhm.
Morris's question, but please don't leave this building thinking we don't care about public safety.
I wouldn't.
Oh, I agree. Your first job is to enforce the zoning ordinances, I understand. And it's our job to make exceptions.
The
it's
hierarchy
a-
of property, obviously, if Mr. Copeland was here asking for a variance that he could build a home at the only location on the lot that's suitable, we would probably be standing here in support. But in terms of hierarchy, we have the dwelling already in place. We have an outbuilding, at least one outbuilding. So again, we're looking at it purely from the perspective of this accessory structure. In terms of the mitigation, that was something I added to the report, so I apologize to Ms. Keefe, but I was thinking more akin to some type of landscaping. Although that the houses sit below or away from the pool, pools do create some noise. And so the thought was maybe putting just a few trees, probably evergreen types, just to help with mitigating the sound just a bit. And in that case, the mitigation plan was acceptable to Mr. Copeland, and the board does support the variance. Then we've done everything we can, I think, as the city to mitigate the potential problem. Thank you.
I might ask though, does the woods kind of already do that?
Yes, but again, remember.
I know you can always do more, but
we're kind of pushing it to the limit of the lot. And, you know, people, I'm sure Mr. and Mrs. Copeland bought here because first of all, it's rural in nature, but out in these areas, people value the quiet. And so if there's a way just by putting a few plantings along that common boundary line at an appropriate location, and that it does provide some mitigation of sound, I think from that perspective, the board could feel comfortable that the impact, that most pressing impact, might be addressed.
So one of our choices then would be to approve the variance with the conditions of him working with the planning department for sound mitigation.
Yeah, and the sound mitigation would, again, not be more than anything other than some planting.
So we can go yes, no, or yes with some plantings.
That's correct, sir.
With
Okay.
conditions, yeah. So those, just a second, yeah, I'll get it. You know, even if you put in that mitigation plan of some sort of plantings, it looks to me like we're now bisecting, or we're taking what is now a kind of a nice backyard area, and we're putting a row of something into that. And so I don't know how thick or heavy that mitigation plan would be. It might even create a hardship. It may create a difficulty in Mr. Copeland getting back there to actually mow that back part of the lawn. So while that makes sense to me, it also makes me curious about the practicality of that and how effective that would actually be. So anyway, just a thought, just an observation.
Well, certainly that's the role the board should play in counterbalancing oftentimes conditions established by the department. I concur with Mr. Van Ness. Certainly, the board can make a recommendation to support the variance with no conditions.
Mhm.
The alternative would be is that if there is a question about just the mitigation, the condition could be fashioned to say that it's based upon a site inspection with Mr. Copeland, and if it's not necessary, the department would then be given the authority by the board to not require.
Okay, so you could make that final determination after a site review with
The property owner.
petitioner. Yeah, okay.
That
Yeah.
way, if it, as you say, if it's practically speaking not necessary, then certainly the department would never want to basically forge ahead with something that's not needed.
Right. And I think the other thing that speaks volumes to this board member is when adjoining neighbors with full knowledge of what a swimming pool may be or how that might impact them, if they're in support of it, it's like, I feel like the city has done an excellent job of making sure that everybody's aware. And I think Mr. Copeland's done a good job of reaching out to his neighbors to go over that with them, so that they can weigh in on that. And when there's support like that, at least for me personally, that's a really, really big statement.
And as Ms. Keefe mentioned in our report details, we not only look at the practical difficulty of the unique circumstance, we also look at just, is there a way to mitigate impact so that if there is a slight problem
Mhm.
or impact, we can address it. And so again, like I say, it's just an acknowledgement that if we grant a variance under the current conditions, oftentimes the current conditions don't stay the same. Properties are sold,
Mhm.
new people move in, and I can certainly assure you that in the Department of Planning, we hear from people that buy next to a road and then realize it's noisy. I want the city to stop that noise. But they purchased the property next to the road. So
Right.
like I say, it's
Right.
just,
Right.
if we can mitigate it up front, we can always then say that property owner, if the lot were to change hands, we've done everything we can to ensure that the impact is minimized.
Right.
Mr. Copeland, did you? Absolutely.
Yeah, I would have no problem with doing some type of mitigation with any type of planting. However, one of our two property owners behind us, our neighbor, in their approval stated that they didn't want any landscaping encroaching on their property. And within 5.5 feet, we would have to be planting right on that property line or on into their property.
Mhm.
So we may be creating a bigger problem doing something they don't want than trying to mitigate. But I would be open to any of that.
Very good.
And I'm assuming that, the city's going to consider that, if the neighbors are like, oh, we would rather just leave it the way it is versus put some more trees in that would, or I don't know if they'd necessarily be trees, and maybe shrubs, who knows what they are. Yeah, you put in some arborvitae, they're gone. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other final comments for the board or the petitioner? From the board or the petitioner or for the department? At this time, we will close the proceeding for a vote. May I have a motion to approve, a motion to deny, or a motion to approve with conditions?
I'd like to make a motion, we approve with no conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Van Ness. Do we have a second to Mr. Van Ness' motion to approve?
You can't vote without a second.
Without a second, that motion does not pass. Is that the right terminology? Does not pass. Do we have a motion to approve, a motion to deny, or a motion to approve with conditions?
Well, I'll make a run up the hill here. I'd like to make a motion to approve on the conditions that the petitioner work with the city to determine if a mitigation plan would be practical. And if so, the petitioner would do it.
Do we have a second to Mr. Sprunger's motion to approve with the conditions as he stated?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Van Ness. We have a second. Mr. Rubus, how do you vote?
As stated with.
Mr. Van Ness,
Aye.
Mr. Morris? Vice Chair Sprunger?
Yes, with the condition. Mhm.
And I, as chair, vote yes with the conditions as stated as well. Congratulations, your variance is approved with the conditions as stated.
Good
Thank you,
luck.
Mr. Copeland. That concludes the petitions for this meeting. Is that correct? Any
Yes, Mr. Chair.
other business from the department?
Not at this time. Just thank you for your service.
That being said, I would like to close the proceeding. Thank you much.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.